Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar, Beat the Competition with a Two-Stage Funnel. This webinar is produced by Manufacturing Marketing Group and is a joint creation between MMG and Revenue Path Group. In this webinar, you'll learn about why simplifying the funnel into 2 stages can give you an edge over your competition. Everyone who registered will get a link to the recording and a copy of the slide deck. We'll send it to you via email within about 24 hours or so of this live broadcast. I have a few housekeeping notes before we get started. Everyone is in listen-only mode, meaning we have muted all attendee phones. We encourage you to ask questions as we go through the webinar. To ask a question or to make a comment, just type it in the question window at the lower right of your screen. Type your question as it comes to you. There is no need to wait until the Q&A session. And if we don't get to your question during the webinar, we'll answer via email after the webinar. The webinar is being recorded and once again will be available on demand on the website and via the follow-up email after this live broadcast. If you're on Twitter, feel free to use the hashtag MFGMarketing and mention at MMIMatters or hashtag RPGSpeaks and mention at RevenuePathGRP. And now I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speakers. Bruce McDuffie is the director and founder of the Manufacturing Marketing Group. MMG provides marketing strategy, planning, and services for manufacturing companies. Hi, Bruce.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming out today.
Brian Gray is the author of the upcoming book, Winning the Last Mile, which teaches sales organizations how to overcome the challenges created by the accelerated age and win more deals. Brian is the CEO of Revenue Path Group, and RPG helps companies in any industry attract more, convince more, and sell more. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, thanks, Sarah. Hey, everybody. Look forward to a great session today.
And I'm Sarah Wesche. I'm the VP of Marketing for Revenue Path Group, and I develop the marketing strategies to communicate RPG's unique solution to customers and prospects. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Bruce, and we'll get started.
So hey, everybody. Thanks again for showing up today at our live broadcast. And I've got a few questions for the audience to learn who's out there and what different industries you work in and so on. And I'll share the results on these too so you can see who else is out there. So the first question I have for you is, what is your role at your company? Are you executive management, marketing lead, marketing team member, sales team member, or other? Give it a few seconds for folks to respond. And we do have these. We have, I think, 6 interactive polls on this webinar just to kind of keep people engaged and so you're not doing your emails out there. Okay, looks like most folks have voted. I'll go ahead and close the poll and I'll share the result. We can see half the folks out there are executive management. No sales team members. Phew. No, just kidding. Okay, we love sales. Okay, next question I have is, what is your industry? What industry are you in? Electronics, electrical manufacturing, engineering or architecture, metal fab or machining, industrial automation or other? And usually when I try to categorize the industries, other is the biggest winner. So if it is something else, if you wouldn't mind, just type it in the question panel. Let us know what that industry is, if you don't mind. Go ahead and close the poll. And I'll share the results. And as I said, other is the leader. Here's somebody, looks like energy. Some folks are typing in now. Education. Great, thanks for sharing that. Okay, one more question before we get into the presentation. Where are you located? Are you, if you're in the US, are you in the, whoops, let me launch it here. If you're in the US, are you in the Eastern, Central, or Western? If you're in Americas outside the US, and then other, and this one's even more fun. If it's other, just type in where you're located. See what kind of a global reach we have here today. Okay, I'll close the results. or close the poll. We get everyone to vote on that one. Great. And we can see a good spread today. It's always interesting. So when we have the questions, it makes it more interesting. Okay, thanks for sharing that information. And let's talk about the agenda today. And here's what we'll be going through today. And first, we're going to talk about why a two-stage funnel, and we'll talk about how it works. Then we'll do a deep dive into the top of the funnel, and then we'll do a deep dive into the bottom of the funnel. And at the bottom, we'll talk about some neuropsychology as promised. And then we've got the 3 deadly C's we'll be talking about, and then we'll give you some action items, how to get started on both parts of the funnel, the top and the bottom. And I'd like to point out also the handouts section of your control panel. There's 2 handouts you can get there. One is the 2-stage funnel. It's the chapter from my book that talks about a 2-stage funnel. And then there's also a sweet spot topic diagram or worksheet you can download. Feel free to download those directly to your computer. The ubiquitous sales funnel. And it is everywhere, isn't it? I mean, folks, it's called the sales funnel. It's called the sales pipeline. There's all kinds of funnels out there. And it's become a bit ridiculous, frankly, because it's just so complex. I did a search on Google when I was putting together the slides here, and the search was sales funnel. And these are some of the images that came up. I mean, take a look at some of these. For example, up here in the right-hand corner, we've got a pipeline that's looks like a New York City sewer line. And then over here, we've got these multiple stages of the funnel. And it's just complex. And so what we're proposing here today is to simplify it. And when you simplify it, you become more efficient. I mean, who has the resources to do a 15-stage funnel and build content to match each portion? Some people might. If you do, more power to you. If you don't, like most of us, and you got limited resources, let's simplify it. You'll have more time to create and match content, and it'll be better for your audience as well. So what we're proposing here is a 2-stage funnel. And the proportions on this are intentional because the engagement or the awareness stage is most of the buying process, frankly. And then the closing or stage is where you talk about your product. And so those are the 2 stages. Top of the funnel is getting awareness, breaking through the noise, getting your brand out there, sharing your expertise. Bottom of the funnel is where you're closing with your product and closing with your company, and still, of course, with audience focus. And I've got a secret formula I'm going to share with the audience here in a few slides, but there is a secret formula for that top of the funnel that will get you more business. And Brian, your comments about a 2-stage funnel.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. The reason the 2-stage funnel really makes sense to me is that you mentioned the idea of overcomplication. I think this 2-stage funnel helps address what we feel are the 2 hardest parts of revenue and sales growth today. And that's really focusing on getting someone's attention, which is the top part of the funnel, and then separating yourself from your competitors and winning the opportunity, which is the bottom part of the funnel. So instead of overcomplicating, we like a funnel that really helps dive in and attack the 2 hardest parts of sales and revenue growth today. And that is, number 1, getting someone's attention, and then number 2, standing out and separating yourself.
Thanks, Brian. Yep. So why does it work? Why does a 2-stage funnel work? And because it simplifies the process, so you're more efficient. Some of you might be thinking, what happened to the middle of the funnel? What happened to MOFU? It's called. Well, I'm advocating that it's just too hard to map content to the middle of the funnel because people are all over the place. People are investigating your company. They're coming in at the top. They're coming in at the bottom. They're bouncing up and down. So to try to map it and control it, I'm saying it's a bit futile. It also simplifies your content creation process. You're creating content for awareness and engagement and credibility, and then you're creating your product content for the bottom. And also complexity. If you get too complex, your audience arrives at your website and they don't know what to do because there's too many options. And if there's too many stages of the funnel, they're going to sense that and they're going to get confused about it. So simplicity wins. Why can you beat the competition with this? Because your competitors are out there probably, number one, pitching products at the top of the funnel, which I'm going to talk about that you shouldn't do. And they're probably making it complex, or they're not even paying attention to it. So by focusing on this process and this buyer's journey with just 2 stages, you can overcome your competition. Let's take a deep dive into the top of the funnel. And again, the top of the funnel is where you're breaking through the noise, you're getting awareness, you're building your expertise in the minds of your target audience. The first point I want to make at top of the funnel is, if you want to break through the noise, if you want to get the attention of your audience, do not pitch products. And frankly, that's what most of your competitors are doing. Maybe you're doing it. When you pitch products at the top of the funnel, you're unable to differentiate because that's what everyone else is doing. And it's very self-centered. And when you're trying to get awareness and trying to break through the noise at the top of the funnel, you've got to talk to the audience about what they want to talk about, what they want to hear. So stop pitching products at the top of the funnel. Instead, share expertise. Share your knowledge about a problem that the audience has. Here's another way to look at it. Let's say that this circle, this orange portion here, this is your target audience. These are the people in this group that will one day buy what you're selling from you or your competitors. And at the time you put a product pitch out there in a message, only this small portion of people in your audience are ready to hear it. They're just not in the buying mode. So you've got everyone else in that circle ignores it. They just discount it because they don't want to hear about it. They're not in the buying mode. They're not in that last 20% of the process. So that's why a product pitch doesn't work. Instead, think about this. Same target audience, but a large portion of them here represented by this big circle, a large portion of them have a problem. They have a pain point, and it's common to a lot of them. When you talk about that pain point or that problem, you help them solve that. That's how you engage. That's how you break through the noise. I mean, if you have a lot of money to spend for marketing and you've got an unlimited budget, sure, you can pitch products and keep hitting it. That's what Oracle did when they were making their name. If you don't have a lot of money to spend or a lot of resources, this is how you can break through the noise for a very reasonable budget. Here's the secret formula I talked about. TOMA plus credibility plus reciprocity. When you share expertise and knowledge at the top of the funnel, this is the formula you get. You get TOMA, top of mind awareness. You get credibility because you've shared knowledge. People believe you know what you're talking about. That's reliability. And reciprocity. You've shared a gift of knowledge. People remember that and they want to reciprocate, and they do that by putting you on the short list and most times giving you the business. TOMA, top of mind awareness, means although they're not ready to buy, when they see your message or see your information, when the day does come and they're ready to buy, you get the first call because you've been helping them out. That's how the secret formula works for the top of the funnel. And you get qualified leads, brand awareness, faster closing rates, increased market share, more sales, all those great outcomes. But the most important thing is to be audience focused. When you're talking at the top of the funnel to get awareness, do some lead gen, breaking through the noise, you've got to focus on the audience. That means you've got to know your audience. Know them, know what they struggle with every day when they sit down at their desk. Know what the pain points are. Know what they aspire to be. When you know these things, then you can share your authentic expertise. That's the intersection. I call that the sweet spot topic. And again, that's the worksheet you can download in the handout section. Okay, I have another question for you before we go into the bottom of the funnel. And this question is, how do you approach the top of the funnel now? Do you share useful knowledge and expertise with audience focus? Do you pitch products and your company? Do you mix product pitching with sharing knowledge? Or are you just selling at all stages of the funnel? Where is your funnel today? Top of the funnel today. We'll give this a few more seconds because it takes a little more thought. Okay, votes are coming in. I wouldn't say they're coming in fast and furious, but they're coming in. Thanks everybody for sharing. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And I'll share the results. Looks like you guys are doing well. If you're sharing knowledge at the top of the funnel with audience focus, 38%, that's great. I didn't think it would be that high. Mixing product pitching and knowledge, good. Great. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hide the poll. And now we're going to go into the deep dive for the bottom of the funnel. And for this, I need to give Brian control. I'll tell you when you're ready to go here, Brian. Okay. You should have it.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Bruce.
You bet.
With the two-stage funnel, what we found is not only is it important to understand how both stages work, but it's also important to understand the dynamics of how business development has changed since the internet has really taken over. Up to 70% of the buyer's journey is now complete before they bring in a salesperson. And that's really where the focus at the top of the funnel needs to be, because in many cases, that's the only way you're going to get the prospect and only way you'll be invited in. For the next portion, I'd like to talk about once you've been invited in and they want to start talking to you and a couple other organizations. And what you're going to find is that the challenge may be just as daunting. In fact, it might even be a bit more challenging, because the fact is our worlds have completely changed. And for those of us who started selling actually before the internet existed, it was a much different world. Now we're showing up with quote unquote self-educated buyers. They've narrowed their scope down to 3 or 4 providers, and they want to understand why they should choose you and why they should do something now. Earlier, Bruce mentioned, don't be pitching product at the top of the funnel. And I'm here to share with you, once you get to the bottom part of the funnel, it's important to also not start pitching product. Because what your prospect's brain really wants to understand is why you and why now. As I mentioned, there are 2 big challenges in revenue growth today. Number one is cutting through the noise, which the top of the funnel helps address. And the second is winning against very similar sounding competitors. So we've coined them the 3 biggest challenges at the bottom of the funnel. Number one is commodization. And commodization is something that not one of us can completely escape, but is something that everyone can do something about. When you think about how the brain makes a buying decision, we'll talk about that here in just a bit. And the fact is we want to believe and think we're way different than everyone else, but to your prospects, you're pretty much all the same. And if you come to that bottom part of the funnel with all 3 competitors sounding the same, looking the same, and acting the same, it's going to come down to price. And I'm not sure how many on the call today where their business model is based on being a low price provider. But if yours is not based on being the low price provider, it's up to you to drive that real separation once you've gotten to the bottom part of the funnel. It's not easy. It's not complicated, but it's not easy. There was an article written recently in the Harvard Business Review, and it was all about aligning your organization around your real value. And one of the questions they asked both CEOs as well as their prospects and customers was that, do you feel that you have a strongly differentiated service or offering? Do you feel you have something that's better and different than everyone else out there? Well, it's no surprise that 80% of CEOs absolutely believe that they have a strongly differentiated service or offering. The challenge, however, lies with prospects and customers. 9 out of 10 do not believe that you have something as strongly different than the others. This becomes problematic. The 80% doesn't scare me, but when 9 out of 10 people cannot distinguish why you're better or different than your competitors, it's no surprise that your sales team keeps coming back asking for better pricing, because they've allowed themselves to become commoditized. And when you're commoditized, it really means there's absence of distinguishable value. And when there's absence of distinguishable value, it will come down to price. The second deadly C is consensus decision making. And the fact is, our decision making teams have gotten bigger. In the old days, right, you had 1 or 2 decision makers you'd work through on the long sales journey. They would help work you. They'd help steer your opportunity through the company and help run interference and help kind of get the right people on board. But the way businesses buy today is that once you've reached the bottom part of the funnel, you now enter the bottom part showing up with 4, 5, or 6 people in that room wanting to know, why should I choose you and why should I do this now? And as you know, as you add more people to the decision-making mix, it starts creating more delays in decision-making, which is very problematic because we all know what time does to deals. It kills them every single time. So not only do we have everybody sounds and looks the same, we now have bigger decision-making teams that we have to learn to contend with. The third deadly C is what I call compressed selling time. So not only do we have the other challenges, when you look at all your opportunities that end up leading to deals, right? What's happened since the internet is now 70% of the buyer's journey is complete before a salesperson enters the picture. This 70% is really what Bruce was talking about at the top part of the funnel. You can't get to them face-to-face as much anymore. So they're going to download white papers, they're going to attend webinars, they're going to do a variety of things to self-educate. And from that, they're going to make a selection of 2 or 3 or 4 vendors that they want to have a conversation with. And while your close ratios may not change, do you see how steep the curve has gotten, or the slope? Which really means once you've reached that bottom part of the funnel, there is no room for error. So just as it's dangerous to talk about products at the top of the funnel, it's just as dangerous to talk about products once you enter the bottom part of the funnel. And I'm going to explain why that is. But first, here's the real challenge with the bottom part of the funnel. Number one, teams don't have the right message to stand out and differentiate. If everyone shows up sounding the same, looking the same, and acting the same, they're going to become commoditized. So what kind of messaging do you use that really helps answer why should I choose you and why should I do this now? The second, their presentations are backward and actually turn off the brain. One of my biggest, strongest, always takeaways is never talk about yourself at the beginning of a presentation. Not only, it actually creates a brain disengagement. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. But do not talk about product. Do not talk about your company. I want you to spend more time talking about the pains, threats, and fears that they might have and how you can uniquely solve them. And finally, they're training with selling systems that just don't work anymore. So the fact is, the internet has completely changed how we do business. And we have to make sure we're able to sell and present in a way that fits how today's buyer buys. Today's buyer buys in groups. Consensus decision making. They give you less time than ever before. So when you take wrong messaging times bad presenting times old-fashioned sales training, you wonder why the bottom part of the funnel, albeit it's only 30% of the journey, but why that bottom part becomes really, really challenging. And I'm going to share you some insights on how to start winning the bottom part of the funnel. And it's by simply focusing on who your real prospect is. Because you're not selling to hearts and souls. You're selling to a 3-pound organ called the brain. And this brain is what, 3% of your body mass, requires 20% of your blood flow and calories to keep it awake. So most of the day, our brains make buying decisions without thinking. In fact, I'm going to share with you that the logical, critical thinking part of the brain is rarely, if ever, used when it comes to making a buying decision. And if and when it does get engaged, it's at the very end, not at the beginning. So when you're in a room full of people, you want to persuade all 4 or 5 of those brains that you are the best choice for them, hands down. 2 parts of the brain. We have what's called the neocortex. This is the logical thinking part of the brain. This is the part of the brain that actually takes the highest amount of energy to keep it awake and engaged. So we rarely use the neocortex when it comes to critical thinking and decision making. The limbic brain, on the other hand, is comprised of the reptilian and middle brain, and the limbic brain is not as smart as the neocortex. In fact, the limbic brain doesn't even know how to read, which is why a picture is always worth 1,000 words. So the limbic brain is actually where 90% of all decision making happens. And guess what? The limbic brain does not care or is not focused on you or your product. What the limbic brain is focused on is eliminating any pain, threat, or fear, and it falls for a great story every single time. This is why it's dangerous when you enter the bottom part of the funnel to talk about yourself and or your product, because it doesn't connect directly to the limbic brain. Some things about the brain. Number one, it's extremely lazy. You cannot make it difficult for your prospect's brain to choose you over your competitors. And if everybody sounds the same and they use the wrong kind of the jargony language and things that just doesn't really connect to a pain, threat, or fear, we start discounting and not paying attention. And then all of a sudden our brains get muddled and we say, oh, they're just like everybody else. It all seems the same to me. So you got to think the brain is lazy and actually thinks very quickly, which is why first impressions are so important. Whether it's a webinar, whether it's a white paper, or whether someone lands on your website. And really important is once you enter that room, once you start your presentation, how you start is critically important. You have to start by focusing on them, their pains, and their threats, more so than talking about yourself. Third part of the brain, meet the brain, is it has a very distinct process and how it makes the buying decision. I'll talk about that in a second. And most importantly, it's extremely self-centered. Why do we not want you leading with product knowledge at the beginning of the funnel? At the bottom of the funnel is that your prospect's brain does not care about what your product is. It might care about what it does, but what it really wants to know is, how can this help me eliminate a pain, threat, or fear? Now, I go back to the first star there. The brain's very lazy. It will not make inferences. So you have to keep your messaging so simple and so clear as to how you provide pain relief for your prospect. Again, your prospect is focused on why you and why now. So what we know about the brain is there's a distinct process, speed, and emotional context that goes into every single buying decision. So we want to make sure we focus on pains, threats, and fears first. Then we tell a story of how someone similar to them solved or eliminated a pain through our solution. And then we use logic and detail and product detail at the very end. From a speed perspective, the brain makes very fast decisions and it doesn't want to be tripped up or confused. So please don't confuse your prospect. And you must consider the power of emotion and story, because emotions become the triggers to making a change. Believe it or not, 60% of all sales opportunities are lost to indecision or no decision. Well, that's no decision, right? They just stay where they're at, or they don't make a change at all. So your biggest threat is not your direct competitor. Your biggest threat is them changing a current process or provider. And it's only through emotion can you capture that spirit for them to actually want to make a change. So what happens, and why so many salespeople fail in the way today's buyer buys, is that while the prospect may talk to you about, we want this or we need this, but how many people on the call really do what they wish, want, and need to do, right? We all want to get in better shape. We all need to change our diet. We all need to do a lot of things. But what our brain does at a subconscious level is it stays relentlessly focused on how it can eliminate pains, threats, and fears with an emphasis on threats. Now, what most people do, the prospect will say, this is what we want, this is what we need. And unfortunately, most salespeople will jump right at the bait and they'll start talking about wants and needs. But where the sale is made is the salesperson who actually focuses more on the prospect's pain, threats, and fears at the very beginning of your presentation. And that's how you start creating fast trust and engagement. So there are 3 key steps. And by the way, I could go on and on for hours of this, but I know we don't have hours and hours. So if you're interested, please let Sarah know or sign up for the ebook, and there's much more detail on all these different aspects of the brain. But there are 3 key steps. Number 1, you really need to develop your 3 compelling whys. Why should I buy from you, and why should I do this now? And your 3 compelling whys must be rooted in real pains that you can solve for someone. We don't want people saying it's our people and our process, because remember, the brain is lazy. When someone says it's our people and process that make the difference, I don't know what that means. So we have to be much more crisp and clear in our communication, because we're selling and targeting the limbic brain, which is not a logical or critical thinker. So you must develop out your 3 compelling whys. Second, do not start your presentation talking about you. And I'm looking at every single one of you on this webinar, because I know the vast majority of people start all their presentations by saying, let me tell you a little bit about us before we begin. And I'm telling you, your prospect's brain does not care. We need to make it all about why you, why now, and make it about their pains, threats, and fears. You will see the defense mechanism and the wall between you and them come down, and they'll start telling you more and more critical information that your competition won't get. And third, focus entirely on how you can solve or eliminate their threats. The biggest challenge organizations have is building trust with prospects. And you don't build trust by talking about yourself. How you build fast trust is with an insane focus on how you can really help them solve or eliminate their threats. And if you adjust your communication in that bottom part of the funnel to helping do that, you will see more people opening up and sharing more and more information with you that allows you to kind of steer the conversation in the right direction. By applying these simple steps, number one, we're going to help you win the brain. That's the most important thing to do. When it's down to you and 3 or 4 other finalists, you've got to focus on what it takes to win the brain. And when you're able to win the brain, you can start carrying the room. And really importantly, we want to help you close the sale. Sarah, back to you.
All right. Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Brian.
Welcome.
So now that we know the theory, behind the 2-stage funnel, let's give a bit more detail about how you on the webinar can practically apply this to your current sales program. But before we move on, we are going to do another quick audience poll. So Bruce, if you could get us started.
You bet, Sarah. Let me get the screen up here. Okay, last question, last poll question for everyone. What are you doing with your sales funnel? So your entire sales funnel, what are you doing with it today? Is it possible you don't have a defined sales funnel or pipeline? Or you have a multi-stage funnel mapped to the buyer's journey? You're in the process of building a proper funnel. You have a loose model for a funnel, or it's all in your head. And funnels are tough. I'm not going to lie to you. Funnels can be tough, but if you simplify it like we're talking about here with just the 2 stages, it's a great way to get going. Okay, we'll give it a few more seconds here. It looks like we have a very solid mix here. Go ahead and close the poll. Last chance. Close the poll and share the results. Very good mix. Looks like the winner is we're in the process of building a proper funnel. Great, good for you. That's probably why you're here today. Makes sense. Okay, well, let's talk about how to apply this knowledge. How can you apply it? So maybe you're listening and thinking, well, this might make sense. And theoretically, it's great, but how do you take action? How do you apply it? And I'll go through top of the funnel actions, and then Brian will go through bottom of the funnel. So first thing, top of the funnel action items, find out what your audience cares about and where you have your expertise. Really take the time, if you haven't done it already, do a survey, talk to your customers, talk to people in your target market who aren't customers, talk to your salespeople, talk to your product people, and really dig in, find out what those pain points are of your audience. And it may not be what you think. So that's step number 1. Number 2, go ahead and create content that addresses that topic that you found. And again, I call it the sweet spot topic. You can download the worksheet from the handout section, but find that topic and then build content. Build content that addresses the audience's problem and pain. That's how you break through the noise of this noisy marketplace. And then start sharing it. You can use outbound advertising, you can use inbound with custom web pages. There's a lot of ways to share the content, but get it out there. Share it on social media channels if it's relevant. Just start sharing that content and you'll start to see, you'll be amazed at the response you'll get when you stop pitching products at the top of the funnel and start sharing that expertise. And then have some transition triggers in place, whether it's a form or whether it's web page visits, whatever that trigger is, so you know when they do move into that final stage of the buying process, so you can start applying the type of tactics and ideas that Brian just shared at the bottom of the funnel. Brian, how about bottom of the funnel action items?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Bruce. The always be proving why you and why now. That's really whether your prospect is skeptical or they're very open-minded. That's all their brain really wants to know is why should I choose you over someone else, or why should I choose you over what I already have? And as importantly, why should I do this now? Those who can connect your value to the current threats and fears that they might be experiencing, and many times you have to bring the prospect's brain there because it won't go there on its own. Make sure you root those solutions and pains that you can solve, and your prospects will start opening up. Second, create brain-friendly pitch presentations that speaks to their pain. Again, please don't talk about you until the very, very end. Please talk about their threats and pains that you can help them solve. It's all about them. It's not about you. And finally, simple language speaks to the pain at the limbic brain level. I know that it's natural for many of us to want to over-communicate and use big words, those type of things, but that's when people say it just went right over my head, because you're not connecting what you're saying to what their pains or threats are, and they stop listening with too much jargony conversation. So keep the language really, really simple, focused on their pain.
It's WIFM, right, Brian?
Yep.
The limbic brain asks WIFM. It asks, what's in it for me?
Absolutely.
You got to answer that question.
Connected to a pain they have, all of a sudden they'll start sharing a lot more information with you.
Absolutely. That's the way it works. Well, folks, we have some takeaways here, and then after the takeaways, we'll have our Q&A session. So go ahead and type in a question at this point if you have one. We've got a few of them in the queue. So takeaways. Top of the funnel, first takeaway, stop pitching products at the top. It's a tough one, especially for manufacturers, because it's hard to get your arms around the fact that you're going to get engagement when you don't talk about your products at the top of the funnel. But test it. If you don't believe it, test it, because I guarantee you it'll work. Instead of pitching products, share your expertise, share your knowledge as related to the audience, what they're looking for, what their pain points are. And you're going to break through the noise when you do this. You'll be able to break through the noise of these, if you're not a big company, the big companies that spend millions of dollars on advertising, you can break through that noise with these ideas. Be generous, share your content generously with whoever wants it. Some folks say, oh, I don't want my competition to get my information. Don't worry about it. They already have it. So just share it with your target audience. And then the secret formula for breaking through the noise: you get TOMA, top of mind awareness, you get credibility, and you get reciprocity when you share knowledge and expertise. So give it a try. Brian, how about your takeaways for the bottom of the funnel?
Yeah, first of all, understand you're selling to the brain, right? That's who your target is. If there's a room full of 5 people, your job is to persuade 5 brains that you are the best fit for them right now. Understand there's a process, speed, and emotional context that goes in to every decision. And the limbic part of the brain's in charge. And the limbic brain is insanely focused on eliminating pains, threats, and fears. So that's number 2, speak to your prospect's pain. Third, time kills deals, but brain-friendly messaging helps you stay in front of the prospect. So making sure that any kind of confusion or sameness will create delay. So make sure when you're presenting, focus on them, their pains, their threats. You'll get plenty of time to talk about your product later. Just don't do it soon. In fact, I don't know if there's any Simon Sinek fans out there. Simon Sinek wrote the book Start With Why, and it sums it up. People do not buy what you do or even how you do it. They buy the why. And the why connects directly to the limbic brain.
Great. Thanks for those takeaways, Brian. And now we're into our question session. And Sarah, do we have any questions from the audience?
All right, thanks, guys. We do. We have a couple great questions here in the queue. The first question is, how do I sell my product without pitching it? And Bruce, I'm going to pass that to you to start.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I've said at the top of the funnel, don't pitch products. Brian says at the bottom of the funnel, don't pitch products until the very end. So you're wondering how you can sell your products. Well, the important thing, and we're not saying never talk about your products. We're not saying that. You pitch your products at the end, at the time that it's needed towards the end of the sales process. That's when you do it. So not saying never, saying at the end, and you do have to talk about your products. And one point I want to make is when you're sharing expertise and knowledge at the top of the funnel, you have to connect it to your company and your brand and your offering. So if you're not talking about it, but you need to connect it, because what you don't want to happen is that somebody says, wow, I got this really great ebook. It really helped solve my problem, but gee, I don't remember who it was or what they do. You don't want that. So you do have to connect your products and your company with your knowledge and expertise, but we're not talking about it. Brian, what's your take on that question?
Well, I would say that, I believe the best presentation is a conversation. And what you really want to do when you present your solution, instead of pitching your product, work on building trust. Because when you build trust with the prospect, and you build trust by focusing on them and with things that they care about, most specifically eliminating their pains and threats, once you create that, you start creating a real conversation where the prospect starts telling you more and more about their current experiences, dissatisfactions with the current provider, and then you can start merging how you can help them solve that problem. Because the what you do is the least effective form of communication. Why is the most important, and then how you can help them is second, and then your product just becomes a natural extension of that conversation.
Let's take one more question, Sarah. We're running short on time.
I think we have time for about one more. I want to make sure we get to our resources for the audience. So one more question would be, any tips for differentiating my brand with the two-stage funnel? Brian, do you want to kick us off on that one?
Sure. The most important thing, I think, from a brand perspective, I believe your brand is your promise to perform. And performance is rooted in the pains that you solve for people. And you communicate that pain resolution through your 3 convincing advantages, which are really the 3 compelling reasons why. So I believe to develop out a brand for the future, you've got to focus on the compelling reasons why someone should choose you. And that becomes your messaging platform moving forward, which really works well at the top part of the funnel. But focus on why you, why now, and your 3 convincing advantages are all rooted in those very things.
And I'd like to add in on that one, if I may. This, by sharing knowledge and expertise at the top of the funnel, that by itself is differentiating you at this time and place, because most of your competitors and most manufacturers I talk to out there aren't doing this. They're pitching products. So now the window of opportunity is open. If you start sharing knowledge and expertise, that alone will differentiate you as well in the marketplace.
And you're doing the same thing, Bruce. You're looking, because people are researching an answer because they have a problem. They have a challenge.
Exactly.
They're looking for that information. So you're solving people's pains and threats by being a resource.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thanks for taking time to answer those questions. We're right here at the quarter of the hour, so I want to make sure we touch on the resources that are going to be available to our webinar attendees today. So Bruce, if you could flip the slide for me, please.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, so you can download RPG's free ebook, Sales is Broken, and that offers tactics you can use today to win more sales. And we'll send you the link via email with the recording and the slide deck for the webinar. You can also join our monthly e-newsletter at revenuepathgroup.com. There's a link at the bottom of the page. And be sure to follow us on your favorite social network. Also, Brian's book, Winning the Last Mile, Conquering What's Left of the Sales Process, will be available in January of 2019. So connect with us on social media or via the newsletter to stay in the loop on the release and when you can pre-order your copy.
Thank you, Sarah. And my resource to offer to the attendees here is you can get a digital copy of my book, The New Way to Market for Manufacturing. Chapter 9 has the two-stage funnel in it. Just go to that website. You can fill out a short form and download it. If you want a digital marketing consultation, I'm happy to do those as well. Maybe you're wondering, gee, this sounds good. I just don't know how to get started. I can help you with that. So thank you, everybody, for spending time with us today. We really appreciate it. I know your time is valuable. Hope you got something out of this. Hope you got at least one good action item you can go try today. And thanks, Brian, for your expertise.
My pleasure. Thank you, Bruce. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Sarah,
everyone.
for your great comment.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.